Hi everyone, welcome to the second video in this 5-part series as you're working and revising your Essay 1, the summary and response. Today is day 2 of focus on summary, and so you'll need to go back if you have not done so and watch the first video. I'm going to do a short recap, but you have lots of examples and some challenges in that first video. So do make sure you viewed that one, maybe even reviewed it, since it might be that you need to go back and forth as I'm speaking. That's why I provide these as YouTube videos so you can re-listen to them if you need to. All right, so let's talk through some of the points from yesterday. I want to give you just a brief recap. We talked about, or I spoke to you about, crafting power-packed sentences, especially the first few, since you want to strive for word economy, getting rid of unnecessary words like adverbs. You might not want many of those, especially if you run into some problems with length in the summary. You want to avoid editorializing. You want to avoid to-be verbs since they add word count, right? You definitely want to go for active verbs. And I'll point a couple out today that I had to go back in and fix myself when I was giving these examples in this video. Also yesterday we talked about what to include and what to exclude. I actually gave you a list. So that list could be something that you're actively utilizing as you're composing this summary, making certain that you include the major points that I went through, and of course work to exclude via revision as you're writing and revising this week like a mad person. And the last thing I did in the video yesterday was point to logical structures, or what I called guiding principles, and this would be something for your readers to follow. So something for you to use as a writer and something for your readers to grab onto as they're going through your summary. Today, I'm going to talk about how to add detail to your logical structure, right? So right now, the summary that I've laid out for you, or the template, the structure, would be these first initial sentences. And you had a lot of examples of those from yesterday's video. And then I listed some possible guiding principles or a guiding structure. Remember last video I actually pointed to character-driven, episode-driven, or maybe even satire-centered structures. It doesn't mean there's not others, but I want to give you several strategies, especially if you're feeling a bit lost. So these could be strategies or guiding principles that you, the writer, employ as you are structuring your summary in a logical way. Right? So you've looked up logos, ethos, and pathos if you've done that getting the background handout, and we'll continue to utilize these appeals. And that's what I want you to recognize too, is that while we are writing about and recognizing them, we are also, as ethical writers, attempting to deploy them. So a logical structure that is consistent and that our readers can easily follow qualifies as a logos appeal that you and I and any other really well trained writer is deploying. We're employing or using a logos appeal, even as we might be talking about them in the writing. So there's kind of this duality, this two-layer idea going on, that logos, pathos, and ethos are tools that we can certainly analyze, but we also employ them. The summary and the general guiding principles, what I'm talking about here, that needs to have a logos appeal, a guiding structure. And so I gave you 3 possible ones yesterday. Today, though, instead of just focusing on those power-packed initial sentences and offering you strategies for guiding structures, I want to show you how to provide some detail within the structure. So I want you to listen today as I work on fleshing out one of the structures. I've chosen, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the character-driven logical structure or guiding principle. And you can see here that the examples I've given given are sentences. So I would kind of view these as the writer as mini topic sentences that I would then flesh out with some detail. So instead of just initial sentences and a guiding structure, if you look down at the bottom of the page here on the left-hand side, what I'm going to try to do today is show you how to structure your summary in such a way that you've got those power-packed initial sentences, your first guiding point, detail, your second guiding point, detail, your third guiding point, detail. And I think in a summary that needs to be as short as hours, you're probably only going to want 3 guiding details. So you're going to want to try to utilize a writing technique, a structure, or a strategy that allows you to group together these 8 short episodes into kind of three almost mini paragraphs, if that makes sense, which is why I'm suggesting, and if you can see here on the character-driven structure side, this idea of first they look at Dylan, next they investigate others, finally Peter learns that Dylan's become a criminal, and then Peter also reflects on his methods of investigation, considering what's happened with Dylan getting captured on the video at Miss Shapira's house. So again, this is a possible structure, but it's certainly one that I'm using as an example of what you could then employ. Of course, you wouldn't utilize my exact words. You never want to do that. But I'm giving you some models or examples that you might consider. So, adding detail. Notice how I've taken that character-driven structure in which the writer focuses on characters to proceed through the summary. So that's a choice that I've made as a writer, that I could group together episodes, or I could group together concepts, in this case characters. And I'm going chronologically, obviously, because I want my readers to understand the movement of the 8 episodes. But I also want them to acknowledge as readers that I am grouping together via characters as opposed to some other principle. So I'm really careful with my mini claims or my mini topic sentences to include either character names or to group characters together. For example, you can see in this point here, next they begin to investigate others who could have vandalized the cars and even themselves, which is the highlight of the satire. So again, notice how I'm pointing to content, but I'm always acknowledging that this is a satire as well, right? So that's important. As we talked about yesterday, or as I talked about with you on the first video, you need to acknowledge consistently that this is the story. Remember the tortilla chip analogy? Dylan's story is the tortilla chip. The salsa would be the mockumentary. So they're using Dylan's story as a vehicle to spoof this true crime genre. Okay, so let's look at what I did here. I've actually kept in black and I've emboldened that first sentence from my example for the character-driven structure. But then in blue here, what I went ahead and did is I actually wrote a few sentences to show you how to flesh out what my mini claim that begins with first Peter and Sam actually argues. So first, Peter and Sam, the fictional directors, focus only on the case against Dylan by dismantling the school board's case. They point to 4 main reasons Dylan Maxwell was expelled before calling them into question, often with humorous results. For example, they discuss the conflicting testimonies of the Wayback Boys and Alex Trimboli when it comes to confirming Dylan's whereabouts during the vandalism. They visually highlight the credibility Trimboli has over Dylan's friends, pitting Alex's academic history against the childish pranks the Wayback Boys film and upload to YouTube. But they nevertheless focus on conflicting testimony to raise reasonable doubt in Dylan's case. The young documentarians also question the school board's claims of access to equipment that would allow someone to erase the film that captured his misdeeds in the parking lot, since Dylan does not have technological savvy to complete such a task, as his continual performance in school and his reputation evidence. So, Dylan is too stupid to have used his access, they argue, which, as the episode shows, appears to be true, right? So, one thing that happens as I'm writing these for you is I notice places where I would need to go in and revise. Remember I said we don't want any editorial commenting? I noticed some here. I don't know if you noticed it, but I certainly did as I was reading. Editorial commentary would be me as the writer, including anything that evaluated or labeled, perhaps using adjectives or adverbs. And when I was reading, I noticed here I say often with humorous results. That indicates that Angela, as a viewer, Dr. Nsenga, Angela sitting in her living room, laughed at this. Right? I'm declaring it humorous. I shouldn't do that. As a matter of fact, I would have to change humorous results to probably something like humorous intent, right? They're trying to make us laugh as they show us the Wayback Boys craziness, their attitude sitting on that couch. So I notice here an error in my own writing, which I wrote this morning, so I would have to revise, often with humorous intent, it should say, because again, that's more summary language. That's when I'm acknowledging what they want to happen. It doesn't mean that everyone laughs. Some of us might have sat there viewing this like, I'm horrified with these people, right? So I need to change that to humorous intent. It's pretty clear they want us to laugh at these fellows and the way that they're behaving, especially with Dylan. That's what they desire in the satire, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the result. So I would have to edit this, and I'm really glad I caught that. So notice again how I even need to go back and revise sometimes. So in this model, results is something that's an interesting error on my part. I would say with humorous intent in my revision. But I did go through here and give only notice 2 of the 4. Right? I did say 4 main reasons, but I'm only providing some examples before I would then move on to others who could have vandalized the cars, right? There's a certain point where Peter says we had to stop just thinking about proving that Dylan didn't do it, and we have to think instead about who did. And that produces that really hilarious, again, I'm editorializing here, but that produces their little map of following the paint can through the party, right? And then they capture all of these videos, as the paint can is moved throughout the entire party until they lose it. So again, they're investigating others, and I would maybe include that down here. And then, of course, maybe in episodes 7 and 8, I would include some detail. But notice how I'm pointing to highlights. I'm literally saying there are 4 main reasons, but here are 2 of the examples, right? So I'm not going point by point. I'm highlighting, even though I'm referencing 4 main reasons, if that makes sense. So they point to 4 main reasons, and then I say, for example, and then I'm moving on to another example as well. The young documentarians also question. So again, I'm not going point by point. I'm highlighting, but I am acknowledging the overall structure of the 4 main reasons. And that's a way forward for you to acknowledge the full structure, but then to highlight a couple of examples, right? So that's something I want you to think about today as you are, again, adding in detail that expands upon each of your guiding principles, whether you've chosen episodic, character-driven, or satire-centered. And again, there are others, but these are just strategies I wanted to provide you that would help you through this assignment specifically. If you were just looking at an article, for example, we might find ourselves looking at parts of that article. So if you've ever read a text and it's separated we might do that. Here we've got episodes. And see the guiding principles as topic sentences.